Okay, I am back and I have a funny story to tell you guys. So this is a client that I worked on in cosmetology school, and it also highlights a lot of the issues you have with a challenging client. You're not going to make everyone happy. It's a guarantee that you'll have at least 5% of clients that are not happy with the service, and it's that little bit of negativity that tends to make it seem like everyone hates you. That's not true. You're always going to have angry people. Sometimes angry people have their own issues they have not resolved, and they take it out on everyone. So something that I've learned, right? And this is a learning lesson. I had a client that called the cosmetology school when I was in cosmetology school. She was explaining on the phone, she wanted some highlights and this and that. So I'm going through asking questions. Oh, touch up my roots, give me a few highlights. So I worked over with my teacher and she said it'll be like $200 something, right? So I told her on the phone it'll be $200 something. The lady asked, can I use a credit card? I'm like, I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't accept cards, but you can bring cash or check. But again, it's, this much. My cosmetology teacher heard me say this. So lady came in for an appointment. We do the color, and then everyone was like, wow, it looks incredible. She says, I don't like the way you blow out my hair, blow it out again. So I blowed it out again, give her 3 different styles. She ends up saying, it was really funny, her last style, she wanted a lot of volume. She goes, no, more volume, more volume. So I make it huge and poofy. We covered her gray. She has a natural level, she's actually almost 100% gray. So she was like really up there. She's about 90% gray. And she had a lot of dark, so we had to lift through a lot of the dark. We did some heavy highlighting. I colored her base a lot lighter, and I blended the highlights in, so she was now about a level 5 to level 6 with some highlights in there. It was a more of a warmer brown, had like a warm caramel look, but it was very flattering for her. Clients were complimenting her. She makes me blow out her hair 3 different times. The last blowout, she looks and she curses me out, and she goes, I look like effing Hillary Clinton. And she's really mad and really cranky. And I'm like, okay. So my instructor came over and like, ma'am, all the blowouts looked fine. What's the problem? What's the issue? She goes, well, I just don't like this. And she goes, okay, well, it looks fine. The school has to close, pay, come back and we'll give you like another service. So what happened was she says, oh, well, here's my credit card. And I'm like, but ma'am, I told you that we don't accept credit card. You never told me that. Because my teacher had heard me say how much the price would be, she says, actually, I was there. That's not true. He did tell you that. So she was very nice. And she goes, look, that's fine. You can mail it to the school. You can come in and pay. But just know that if you don't pay this, we're going to have to cancel you off the book. So she ended up mailing the check. And then she came back and she comes in next time. She goes, I want to color my roots, and I don't want it to be hidden because some people like to overcharge. I didn't take it personally. I'm like, she's just an angry person. I'm like, that's fine. We'll find you someone else. So she had the other stylist, a student that was in there, one of my classmates, do her hair, and everything else was a level 6 with highlights. She then goes, I want you to color my roots black, and we're all telling her, no, it will not look good. It won't look good. It won't look good. Because she's all gray, and it would look like a skunk. She wouldn't listen to us, so eventually, we got to give the client what you want. You can't give them good taste, but you got to give them what they want. He does the color for her, rinses it off. As he dries her hair, he turns her around and she starts screaming. She's calling him obscenities, she's cursing at him, she's freaking out, making a whole scene. My teacher, who's going through a lot, gets up, slams her chair in, making a loud noise. Everyone's like, oh crap, she means business. She walks over there. She's like, ma'am. They get into a full-on match, arguing. And then she shouts out, by the way, guys, this is not how you handle an angry client, which is true, but sometimes, you do lose your temper. You just got to know how to, recognize it. Long story short was she left there with a skunk hair, and that's what she wanted. So that if a client wants to talk you into something, that's the moral of the story. One of them is, be really careful not to lose your temper. I know some clients can make it happen. 2 is, if you do have 100% white roots and your client wants something that won't look good, show them a photo of what that would look like and tell them, like, look, you're going to look like a skunk, and explain it. If they still want it, do it, but try not to let them control what you're using. It's like we don't let the client, some styles don't let the client see the swatch book. I always have mixed feelings on it. I gauge it. There was one client I worked on who had OCD that is so severe, she would call the salon and fill up her voice box because she'd have to get the right, rhythm or the right method of the sentence. So that was her compulsion. So she kept doing it. In the salon, she had her own, series of behaviors, and I could manage her, but I'd put my foot down and say, like, look, this is what we're going to do, and you had to be firm and mean what you say. And if she was, getting intrusive thoughts and verbalizing them, I said, like, look, this is not appropriate. If you cannot conduct yourself, then, we won't be able to book you. And that's how bad it got, because she would find other clients. She wanted cayenne red hair. She would have to see me take the bottle of Shades EQ with cayenne and mix it. So I joked with a friend. My friend goes, what would you do if they discontinued it? And I joked, and I'm like, you know what I would do? I'd probably take the bottle, empty it out, keep a spare one, and then pour the cayenne in there, which in all seriousness, I probably would have done, because she was a client that in order to keep her calm, she had to see me do that. And that was something I allowed, but I didn't allow her to control the actual process of it. I did add other stuff to the cayenne. She didn't know that. So that is that. Also know that they give you a chart on coloring gray, and what they'll tell you is that color on gray hair will look a lot darker. Something I've learned is that it's better for men to use a demi-permanent color when covering gray. That will give you a blended look, and it's also good for salt and pepper. Some lines have their own color for men, which is just a demi-permanent color that is cool tone. If you really want a good gray coverage formula, do a neutral ash, because it will be very smoky and very drab. That's ideal for men. Men don't want warmth. And the benefit of using a demi-permanent color is that when it fades on tone, so it fades to a lighter shade of an ash instead of a golden, scary, warm brown. So that is how you can cover certain grays. I know some men, and not all men are the same, some men want it to be obvious. Other men are cool like me, and they want, oh, when I start to go gray, I will go pink, blue, purple, the fun colors. I'd want it all. One of my friend's fathers, who is a hairdresser, he used to dye his hair red all the time, like me, and it's hard to see, but this color, the light doesn't do it justice, is actually more of a vibrant red. If you did it over gray hair, it would come out too red, and he did that when he started going gray. He didn't realize that, so he put the red hair color through, and it turned it like a pinky color. That's what can happen. So just, be careful of that when your client has gray. It can turn off tone if you're not careful at mixing. So they recommend 2 shades lighter than the natural level to ensure a natural result in salt and pepper hair. I would say don't do that, because if you're not careful, it can come out looking highlighted. So always use a demi-permanent color. You can do the comb method. There's so many techniques. Know that they give you tables in gray coverage, but this will vary on manufacturer. And also know that you want to take into account the client's personality, such as, are they fun? Are they more conservative? Are they more artsy, like rock star-like? More natural? What are their personal preferences? Do they like reds? Do they like gold? Do they mind if it's warm? Do they like cool? Their job might play a role in it. So if someone's a bank teller, maybe they don't want pink hair, but you never know. The amount of gray hair and its location on the head is very important. Again, because if most of the gray is right here, your formula for everything else that's not gray will be different than for this one area. So know that they tell you a chart for semi-permanent and demi-permanent color. If you're 90 to 100% gray, use the desired level. If you're 70 to 90%, equal parts desired, 1 level lighter. If you're 50 to 70% gray, 1 level lighter than desired level. If you're 30 to 50% gray, equal parts 1 to 2 levels lighter. If you're 10 to 30% gray, 2 levels lighter than desired level. Permanent color formulation for gray hair. If you're 90 to 100%, use the desired level. If you're 70 to 90%, 2 parts desired level, 1 part lighter level. 50 to 70%, equal parts desired and lighter level. 30 to 50%, 2 parts lighter level and 1 part desired level. 10 to 30%, 1 level lighter. So what they're saying, especially if you have like the less gray, is that lighter is, I guess, easier to correct if it's too light. So it does get confusing with that. Don't really put too much merit on this, because how you formulate is going to be a lot different. So if someone has gray hair, you're going to mix a neutral series, an N series, or a G series, which is a gold, because that will cover gray. So for example, let's say my client is 50% gray, she's been using 6R, and she wants to color her regrowth. 50% gray, I'm going to use, think of it like this. This is a way easier way of thinking of it, and this is the real world versus this horrible chart that gives you so many different options. The percent of neutral should equal the gray. For example, if your client is 25% gray, I'm going to use 1.5 ounces of my target shade, which would be the 6R. That client who has some gray, let's say she has 25% gray, wants a 6R. We're going to be using 1/2 ounce of 6N to fill in for the natural pigment we're missing. I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of 6R so her roots don't turn pink. The gray doesn't turn pink. Apply it, process for 45 minutes. If she comes in and her hair is 50% gray, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do half of the color, so 1 ounce 6N and 1 ounce of 6R, because standard mixing is usually 2 ounces. If she has 70 to 100% gray, or more than 50, I'm gonna do 1.5 ounces of 6N and half an ounce of 6R, especially on the more gray. So always make sure your formulas match up like that. Anything under 25%, she's like 10% gray, just use it as a regular shade. It's not gonna make too much of a difference if the gray is dispersed. In fact, what that will do is give the hair a nice dimension. It'll make the hair look highlighted. If it's too much gray, then that's a whole nother story because it might come off tone. So that is that for gray. So they give you some tips for gray coverage. They say formulate at a level 7 medium blonde or deeper for best gray coverage. I'm gonna argue that and say at least a level 8 because you can get coverage. Also know that certain brands of color will have their own gray series, and what that is, it's a high tenacity complex, and that means that the pigment is a lot stronger, so it will attach to the hair. Some colors that have a gray line are a little bit more alkaline. They might have more of a stronger ammonia smell. You want to process the color for the full 45 minutes. I cannot tell you how often people do this mistake, and it drives me crazy. They'll throw the color on, 25 minutes. They'll rinse her out, oh my God, she didn't cover. Then they'll throw the color back on, put her under dryer, and they go, oh my gosh, it's warm. Room temperature, do not use a color accelerator, which is a dryer. If you're gonna use anything, invest in a color steamer. Add neutral tones to the gray. They basically repeat what I said with the formula. 25% gray, 25% natural, which will be standard mixing is 2 ounces of color. So you'll do for 25%, half an ounce of the N series, neutral or natural. If it's 50%, 1 ounce of the N series, 1 ounce of the color you want. 75%, 1.5 ounces of the N series, half an ounce of the color you want. Know that high lift blondes are not designed for gray coverage. So if you do use a high lift blonde on gray, 2 things are gonna happen. One, if it's a high lift N series, it'll be neutral, so you're gonna get pure lift, which may work if you're doing a highlighted effect. If you decide to use a high lift, that is, I know one brand I worked with had a rose gold, which would be a no-no. That would turn the hair a orangey pink. If you do a high lift on gray, what's gonna happen is the gray will take the base of the color and you're gonna turn the hair a really majestic violet or deep blue or green or gunmetal gray. That may look good on your client who is 20 and hip, but on granny, not so much. Know that when you are trying to get that high lifted look, they say formulate at a level 7 for the base color and add some highlights to create a balanced blonde on blonde result. I'd even argue that and say if you have a client who wants something like a lighter blonde but she doesn't want to cover all her gray, do a level 10, process it for 45 minutes because it won't cover fully, and then put a glaze over it, or a demi-permanent color, that's the correct term, demi over it, and see how that works. You can also do if she wants more of a natural look, cover at a level 8 or 9 and then do a highlighting cap, pull some things out, put some highlights over that, and then tone, and it looks fantastic. The book talks about a product a technique called pre-softening, and they call it pre-softener a product. I'll be honest, I've never heard of a pre-softener. So pre-softener is the process of treating gray or very resistant hair to allow for better penetration of color. Pre-softening raises the cuticle layer of resistant hair and allows for better penetration of color. The pre-softener acts like a stain of the hair. It is applied, processed, and removed, and then the hair color is applied. I've heard of people doing pre-staining. They'll take the color out of the tube, which is alkaline, and they'll dab it on that one area, and then they'll cover over it when they color. I've heard of that working. That's another technique. Pre-softeners are alkaline. I don't know if they're colors or what. We don't use them in the salon. I've heard of people trying to pre-soften with peroxide, which degrades the hair, which I guess would work because it does weaken the protein structure, but I've never done that. I've just done color the correct way. If you do color the correct way, you will not need to use a pre-softener. Just know that. So they say once the resistant hair has been pre-softened, blot the pre-softener color off the towel and apply the finer color formula over it. Process per the manufacturer's instructions. They say to process the pre-softener formula to resistant areas and allow it to stay on for 15 minutes before rinsing. Again, I've never used one. I don't know what a pre-softener is. If you know any brands that have such a thing, comment down below to let me know and I'll try them out in my mannequins. Because I'm still trying to learn too. There's a lot of stuff in this industry, and some of the stuff is either outdated or will come back at a later time. I'm a generation that I guess missed the pre-softener. So to build your client base, here's some good business tips. You want to be knowledgeable at hair color. So you always want to keep up to date with celebrity hair trends. You always want to be honest in recommending color options. That means the cost. I know it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. Two things are very uncomfortable. Saying no to a client and explaining why you can't do something because it's for their best interest, the integrity of their hair. And two is money. It's very hard to have the conversation how much something does it cost. What I've learned is what I'll do is I'll write it down on an index card and I'll hand it to a client, and that will help. Or what I'll do is I'll give them some choices. I'll say, here's option one. I can do a double process bleach. Option two is I can, maybe do some high lift. I'll try to get you as light as possible. I can't guarantee it will work as good as the bleach, but I can charge a lot less. Other options, I can do some highlights. I'll do a full highlight or a partial highlight and give them a price range, and they can kind of pick what they want. It gives them options. Give them about 3 options because that'll be more than enough to choose from. Always be positive, be excited, enjoy it. I know they say somewhere in here, which I thought was pretty cool, they said in order to sell color, wear color in your hair, and they say that as a professional you should be an example of the services you can do. This is a very personal thing. If you don't feel comfortable coloring your own hair, you don't have to have color. I've heard people say that if us stylists have crazy hair, it makes the client worry, and I always find that I've had all colors of rainbow. My clients still come back to me. They always loved it. In my own experience, having crazy colored hair, it made the client want to come to me. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. They would know I'd never make their hair crazy. And it also depends on where you're working. If you're working at salons that are more of like the urban areas, you're gonna have a lot of cool people that come in, they want some cool things. I've worked with a lot of my clients are usually the younger ones and the artists that are in music or dancing talent, and they want the fun fashionable colors. Always know that you should display color materials at your workstation. You can have flyers. There's so many ways to do that. Some brands will give you things to hand out and in the salon to sell your services. And suggest hair color to every client, because a client is always a potential candidate for hair color services. You can always say after a haircut, oh hey, maybe next time I can book you in for color, and I'll give you a color that'll complement your fringe. And that's the language you want to use. So we're almost at 18 minutes. Take your 5-minute break. We come back, we're going to delve into more color correction tips.